All right, so in this demo, we're going to show how to create custom trust chains. That is, trust chains that are independent of the root certificate of the Shutterfy platform. Um, there are use cases for creating your own trust chain, and it's really for people who already know what that means. So this is not like necessarily a general consumer use case. Of course, somebody can explain to you what it means, and you can use it for both technical use cases and non-technical use cases. Um, for technical use cases, usually maybe like a software um, supply chain type solution. You create a route and you issue certificates to people who you trust, so that when they publish and create packages, it can be validated in some way and trusted. For non-technical use cases, same mechanics, but for non-technical uses. So basically, anything that has some kind of org structure type, uh, you know, approach to it, and that supports or needs delegation. In other words, giving other people the ability to issue certificates until you get all the way down to no delegation, which is just leave certs, meaning you can use those certs, but you can't use them to issue new certs. Any use case like that, it could be, business process or just fun. I'm sure there are plenty of fun use cases, maybe games that you can implement using a custom trust chain. So this is more on the nerdy side of things. It's not really, I don't view it as a core value prop for Shutterfy, but it's relatively easy to use, and there are people who may have use for it, so we decided to add it. To create a certificate, a custom trust chain, first thing is to create your custom root. That's going to serve as the root of your trust chain. Let's see, add a field, purpose, the custom roots. Add it with a label, custom roots demo. We'll unmark the privacy, which means the information is publicly viewable. Almost all certificates should be private, with very few, except, like trust anchor certificates don't need to be private, but most consumer use certificates should be private, which is why by default that's checked. So we'll issue this. It will take us to the issuing screen where we can set an expiration date, and we can add delegations. Let's add, say, 10 levels of delegation. Basically means I can not just issue certificates, but I can issue certificates to other people and give them delegation rights. That is not just the ability for them to issue certificates, but for them to issue certificates that also have delegation rights to them, right? So you can create an entire org chart using that approach. So this root should be self-issued, because at the root we do that. And that saves the certificate. If we come back on our list of certificate, we'll now find it listed here. The second one we're going to create, let's create one level below the root. We can call this title manager. Hit save here. Okay. Demo manager, same thing. I'm gonna make sure it's not private. You could keep it private, but since we're gonna give it delegation, then it means it's playing a kind of authority role, and authority role certificates usually you don't want to be private. And also it doesn't have any private information really on it. Alright, so we have that. We'll give this delegation of, let's say, 3 levels. It means they can issue certificates to other people that would be deemed trustworthy, but also they can delegate up to 2 levels below themselves. Right. And when you do that, when you add delegation, you'll see this. And hopefully I did it right, because the root, I didn't add delegation to the root, even though I don't think that should matter. We'll see if it works. All right, this time around it's not self-issued. We're gonna use the demo root that we created here, custom root demo. Okay, it gives that error because it couldn't publish it to the registry. That's fine, we're just demoing. So the registry right now doesn't allow you to publish non-trustworthy certificates, meaning certificates that are not rooted by Certify. We might change that, we're thinking about it, but for now that's how it is. All right, so if I take this manager cert and let me say I want to test it, we'll see what happens when I create a claim using this certificate. I add a field there, I think everything else can stay as is. Save it. Now if we come to our claim verification field here, first uncheck both of this, hit go. Says there's no claimant information because there's no identity anchor tied to the certificate, and then it doesn't recognize it because it's not rooted by the Certify platform. You have 2 options here. One, to get rid of the identity error. You should almost never ignore identity except for these custom use cases where we assume you already know what you're doing. It'll continue to give you this error. You can address that by bookmarking, in other words, whitelisting this certificates, your custom root, right? So a user has to agree to whitelist your custom root in order for your claims, to be valid. If we paste this here, say root demo, we check this bookmark, it saves it down here. It's our custom root that we just added. Let's see if our verification has any luck this time around. Alright, it's still giving that error. Let's try, see if the attaching of chains helps. I think there might be a bug tied to whitelisting that somehow doesn't pick up the whole thing. So I just copied the claim. I'm gonna refresh. We've run this demo previously and I noticed that problem. So I'm gonna come back in here, paste this, select this to ignore the identity. Alright, this time around it says the claim is valid because we whitelisted the root. This information is not verified because it's not on the certificate, and since we didn't put any information on the certificate, this is just additional information that is provided with the claim. It's not certificate verified. So this works just like regular Certify certificates with trust anchoring, except this one doesn't have a Certify associated trust anchoring, and a user has to explicitly trust this custom chain by bookmarking it in order to be able to, to verify claims issued from this chain and get trustworthiness out of it. So again, this is not for common everyday users. Either you have a specific use case and you understand what it means, or somebody teaches you what it means and you want to make use of it. But it's fairly easy for us to add this, so we've enabled it for general usage. Thank you very much.